Hello and welcome to another Brawl video. A few weeks ago I had a lot of fun playing my Lorehold control deck, especially when it came to casting Armageddon to destroy all lands, as this is a very unique effect that we haven't really seen on Arena before. Plus, Brawl happens to be the only format where we can realistically cast it, and it's also a great way to punish all those green ramp strategies in the format that just want to put a lot of additional lands into play to then cast all their powerful bombs. Speaking of bombs, Arcane Bombardment was another standout card in the Lorehold deck as a way to repeatedly get back our expensive instants and sorceries from the graveyard for free. So I basically wanted to recreate the magic of casting Arcane Bombardment and casting Armageddon, and as opposed to picking a commander and building a deck around it, I picked these two cards and then built up the deck from there. So of course we're going to need access to at least red and white mana, but by playing black we also get access to a bunch more of these tutor effects, so we can get whatever card we want and put it into our hand, so we can find the Armageddon and Bombardment more reliably. Blue also gives us a few tutor effects, especially for instants and sorceries to find Armageddon, and it also gives us a bit more card draw. And now by playing 4 colors, we also get to run more of these indestructible tapped lands, the Cycle of Bridges, since this is another way of breaking the symmetry of casting an Armageddon, since if our lands are indestructible, they're not going to get destroyed. And another way to break the symmetry of mass land destruction is by playing a bunch of these ramp artifacts. So we've got all the signets and talismans in all these color combinations, which can also help develop our mana, ramp into some of our bigger spells, which then also pair very nicely with the Arcane Bombardment. But then once we cast Armageddon, we're not too far behind, and we can take over the game very quickly. So then I basically settled on Breya Etherium Shaper as our commander, as it's just individually a powerful card, making a pair of 1/1 Thopter tokens, can pay 2 mana and sacrifice 2 artifacts at any point to either deal 3 damage to a player or planeswalker, give a creature -4/-4, or simply gain 5 life. So this is another great card that we can ramp into, maybe repeatedly cast thanks to all our artifact mana. And by generating 3 artifacts with 1 card, it's also a great way to set up some of our affinity payoffs that will draw us more cards, and those also play well with all the artifact lands and all the various signets and talismans. So then if we take a look at our deck breakdown, I've split it up into a few categories, starting with all the ramp artifacts. Then we've got more card draw. A lot of these are affinity cards that we want to discount with our artifacts, and then those will also help replenish our hand. Then we're also going to need a lot of interaction, especially sweepers are important, because while Armageddon can destroy all lands, our opponent might have still cast a few powerful creatures in the meantime that we'll have to clean up, so then a sweeper can get rid of them all at once. And then we get to the tutor package and the Armageddon itself that we're planning to cast every game. And then finally we've got some more expensive spells, the various ultimatums that we can also ramp into with our mana artifacts, and these are also very synergistic with the Arcane Bombardment if we can get them back turn after turn. So yeah, that's pretty much our deck in a nutshell. Now for the deep dive, starting with our mana artifact, can easily enable Metalcraft on Mox Opal to make an extra mana for free, thanks to our artifact lands especially enabling it early on. And then we've got every single signet and talisman in every color combination that we have access to. So that's another benefit of playing 4 colors, is that we get to play more of these, and they can also help set up our commander on turn 3 reliably. And then we also have the classics like Arcane Signet, Cold Steel Heart, and Solar Transformer, only playing artifacts that can make colored mana to help cast our commander on turn 3 and to help cast our ultimatums, so we don't particularly want colorless mana. Then there's Chromatic Lantern, which is also important for fixing our lands, so they can help cast our various ultimatums, since they have a very specific color requirement. There's a Coalition Relic, which can also maybe store up an extra mana if we don't use it for a turn. Weathermaker with Landfall can also benefit us, and then Firemind Vessel can make 2 mana of different colors. And then the Chromatic Orrery is both kind of a payoff card for having some earlier ramp, as it can also be used to draw extra cards, especially with Breya in play we can draw 4 with it, but it also makes a bunch more mana, and it also fixes our colors going forward. Then moving on to our card draw section, we've got Stock Up. Thirst for Knowledge can always discard an artifact land or a signet if we no longer need it. And then a bunch of these Treasure Makers, Big Score, Pirate's Pillage, and Unexpected Windfall can also cycle through the deck and are also quite synergistic with Arcane Bombardment. We've got Thoughtcast, which we can often cast for 1 mana to draw 2. Thought Monitor, another way to draw 2 on a 2/2 creature. Voyage Home, another affinity payoff for gaining 3 and drawing 3. And then Krang can also refuel our hand. And then Imskir Iron Eater also draws more the more artifacts we have in play. Then moving on to our removal, we've got a few efficient spot removal spells, Source to Plowshares in white, Fatal Push in black, have plenty of fetch lands and treasure tokens to enable Revolt, can even do it with our commander. And then Galvanic Blast in red, again easily enabling Metalcraft early on to deal 4 damage. Then I did want at least one discard effect in case I wanted to tutor one up, so Thoughtseize is the most efficient one. Get Lost also an answer to Planeswalkers or enchantments. Bitter Triumph can also hit creatures and Planeswalkers. And then we get to our sweepers, where we have Toxic Deluge, can also get around Indestructible. Same with Sunfall, exiling all creatures. The Incubate token also has good synergy throughout. And then we've got a lot of 4-mana sweepers, Day of Judgment, Wrath of God, Damnation, and even the uncounterable Supreme Verdict. And then we move on to our tutor effects, where we have Enlightened Tutor to find artifacts and enchantments and put it on top. Mystical Tutor for instants and sorceries, put them on top. And then at the cost of 2 life, Vampiric Tutor can get whatever card we want. Then Wishclaw Talisman has great synergy with our commander, as we can activate it, and with the activation on the stack, we can sacrifice it to one of Breya's abilities. That way we get to search up whatever we want, without giving the talisman back to our opponent. Plus, it's also an artifact we could find with Enlightened Tutor if we're set on finding Armageddon, since the tutor cannot find Armageddon by itself. Then, in a roundabout way, through Talisman, we can still get access to it. Then there's Solve the Equation to find whatever instant or sorcery we want. And Grim Tutor can find whatever we want at the cost of 3 life. And then Crucible Worlds can be a way to offset the Armageddon, as we now get to replay lands out of our graveyard. Then we've got Armageddon itself, and Besiege the Mirror can also maybe search it up and cast it for free if we enabled Bargain, which we can easily do by just sacrificing an artifact, maybe even an artifact token from Breya. And then Dark Petition can potentially give us 3 mana back if we enabled Spell Mastery. And then we get to Arcane Bombardment and all the ultimatums. So we've got Cruel Ultimatum, making the opponent sacrifice a creature, discard 3 cards and lose 5, whereas we get to return a creature from our graveyard to our hand, draw 3 and gain 5 life. Sometimes a reason to let Breya go to the graveyard as opposed to sending it back to the command zone. Then a Ruinous Ultimatum is a great answer to opposing ramp artifacts, which might be offsetting your Armageddon, since you get to destroy all non-land permanents your opponents control. So this plus Armageddon will destroy everything the opponent has. Then there's the Jeskai Revelation, which can return an opposing permanent or spell, deal 4 damage, make a pair of Monk tokens with prowess, draw 2, and gain 4 life. We've got the Inspired Ultimatum, gaining 5, dealing 5, and drawing 5. And finally, Magma Opus can also be discarded from hand to make a treasure token early on, but if we actually cast it for 8 mana, we get to split up 4 damage, tap 2 things down, make a 4/4 token, and draw 2 cards. And then our mana base includes the Cycle of Bridges, which are indestructible. And then we've got the monocolored artifact lands. These are not indestructible, so they will get blown up by Armageddon, and they can also get blown up by opposing artifact removal, so you do have to be careful, but the upside is still there since they help enable Affinity and some of our other artifact synergies, can even sacrifice them to our commander. And then the rest of the mana base, one of each basic, plenty of fetch lands and other multicolored lands, can also fetch up our various 3-color lands to further fix our mana. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play, facing Captain Storm, so another artifact deck. Our hand's acceptable. We've got our artifact mana to fix for black, so we can Dark Petition to maybe get Armageddon. And see, for now, can play the Signet. Next turn we could big score. And our opponent with Captain Storm. Okay, so could also just double Signet here once again, which I don't mind. Do not have Spell Mastery enabled for the Dark Petition. So maybe we do take a turn to cast Big Score. Opponent with a Melded Moxite. Do want to also give my opponent the opportunity to play a few more lanes. Okay, so let's maybe big score discarding a land. And then I'll still be able to maybe thirst for knowledge. Alright, so could thirst, which enables spell mastery. Could also still play a signet or talisman here. Sure. And then we can thirst at instant speed. And then next turn I can maybe Dark Petition into Armageddon. Opponent now with a Navigator, making Thieving Magpies. And a Dowsing Device. So destroying all lands is nice, but we still need to find an answer to these creatures as well. So they're gonna get to put a Thieving Magpie into play. And we're also taking 9. Okay. So I might actually have to get a different sweeper first. It's a lot of lands. I'll just discard the talisman now. And there's the Magpie. Okay, so yeah, Dark Petition is enabled. So I can cast it with Spell Mastery. And then 3, 4, 5, 6 mana at my disposal. So can't quite Ultimatum. But I could go for like a Sunfall and cast it. Yeah, that's probably the pick. So then I can still fetch a Plains. I guess we already discarded Plains, so it's gonna have to be a dual land. And then Talisman into Sunfall. So the board looks a bit cleaner. Now I still need to find a tutor for Armageddon. But at least we've got plenty of artifact mana. And Breya can also come down and clean up some other creatures. The Grotto, also a way to give creatures haste. Alright, Supreme Verdict would have been useful last turn. So, I think we just go for Breya. And then keep lands in hand. Opponent wants to steal Breya. In response, take out Captain Storm, sacrificing Breya herself, and a 1/1. Otherwise, they would just return the favor here. Could animate the Incubator, but since we have a Supreme Verdict in hand, we can take it easy. Now Repurposing Bay could be scary. Alright, let's get in for 1. And replay my commander. And they want to steal it once again. Alright, so this time I'll just gain 5 life. And Repurposing Bay can get a 2-drop. It's gonna be the boots for Hexproof and Haste. And they're gonna make a 2/2. Alright, Enlightened Tutor can get whatever artifact or enchantment I want. which could be a Wishclaw Talisman, which can then get Armageddon. So, what does that mean? I think I still play Breya, so I can sack the Talisman before giving it to the opponent. And I'm still gonna keep a land in hand, I think. Although I might get punished if they have another act of treason. But that's fine. Captain Storm is back. And with haste. So we want to get the Wishclaw. Alright, and then now I'll go full control so I can sack the Talisman before giving it to my opponent. So with this ability on the stack, we can activate Breya and take out the robots. And now find Armageddon at long last. And cast it. And then play a land. Okay. So I like my chances now. Take 2. Animate the incubator. And attack. Opponent falls to 4. And then we can just close out the game with 2 Breya activations. Alright, sweet. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Teysa, black-white, sacrifice. So, Day of Judgment is good, Talisman makes 1 white mana, still need a second. So this isn't perfect, but I can play Breya in the meantime. So, I'll give it a shot. Still need a bit of extra artifact mana, finding a fetch line for Crucible would be great. And then, at some point, hope to find our Armageddon or a tutor effect to grab it. Alright, there's a Dark Petition, so that can eventually get Armageddon. And a Bitter Blossom can make a token each turn. Damnation, another sweeper, although one I cannot cast at the moment. So we'll go for Breya. So yeah, fetch land would solve a lot of problems here. I'll take any land in general. Now 3 mana for a Meathook Massacre to wipe away all 1/1s. And a Talisman is decent too. So can play that into Crucible. Hit for 4. So now we have double black for Dark Petition, so I could Dark Petition for a fetch land. Although hopefully we can just draw one. With my 2 sweepers I should be able to survive for a while. Just have to watch out for the Meathook Massacre draining me as well now. But then Jeskai Revelation can gain life back. Definitely looks like a game where something like an Arcane Bombardment could be fun. Getting back our Revelation and Dark Petition. High Market can sack a creature to gain a life. So mostly just a sacrifice outlet. And Infestation Sage is next. And a Demonic Disciple, so goodbye Breya. There's Armageddon, alright. Well, at the moment, I would blow up 2 of my own lands, and I have a Crucible in play, so yeah, this seems like the move. And then I get to immediately return my Vault of Whispers. And we should be able to handle the creatures in play. Okay, play another land. Maybe I just take another beating, or I can just wipe the board. Sure, it's just Damnation. The Bitter Blossom plus Massacre is still a bit of a clock, so we don't have infinite time to set up. But now, especially if I draw lands, I could Dark Petition and get the Bombardment as well. So, yeah, can do that now. Wouldn't be using the floating mana. Take 2. Has our opponent found a lane? They did. And a command tower. So if I don't wipe the board, next turn I take 3 down to 6, and then if I wipe the board I take another 4. So then I would be at 2 life. So if they play another creature I could potentially be dead. So the safest move is definitely to Jeskai Revelation here. Could also bounce the Bitter Blossom, make them replay it, or bounce the Massacre. Yeah, I guess Magma Opus is the one that lets me split up the damage. Revelation is just 4 damage to 1 target. Let us just pass. Wait and see what they do. So our opponent cannot really fizzle the life gain if I target a creature and they sack it in response. So yeah, let's maybe just bounce the Meat Hook. Deal 4. Back up to 11, and now we can maybe Arcane Bombardment into Fatal Push and get one of these spells back. So, yeah, that seems like the play. Trigger Prowess. And we can Fatal Push their blocker. Probably not casting Armageddon if we exile it. Damnation is fine, even though we're technically ahead on board. So now we can wipe the board every time we cast another instant or sorcery. And the opponent's not going to be beating that. Next turn with a land we can maybe cast the Magma Opus, or I can just discard it to get it in the graveyard, and then try and hit it if we, let's say, solve the equation, trigger Bombardment afterwards. And then at some point we can also replay Breya to start gaining a life if we're in danger. Sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, and I think we found a bad matchup here in Raph and Mikey Troublemakers. Fatal Push is basically a dead draw. I can solve the equation for Armageddon, but currently that's punishing myself as much as the opponent. So, take a mulligan. Got a bunch of artifact mana. Still missing the Armageddon to go with it, because of course Armageddon would be effective at slowing down the opponent as well. But I think we keep this and then hope to find the card draw or tutor effects afterwards. Exploration is a card you don't typically mind seeing when you're about to cast an Armageddon. Alright, we found the Dark Petition. Now the question, is this hand still fast enough? We do have a Mox Opal, but our opponent was on the play with an Exploration, so they might get to 7 mana before we can set up our combo. Now Rhythm of the Wild I don't mind seeing. So let's play a Signet. And then Mox Opal is active, thanks to the artifact lane, so I can already play the Talisman. So that was a good turn. Opponent's gonna Glimpse to get a land. And that's it. Bitter Triumph now also instant speed removal. Alright, I think we might actually be doing it here. So, sequencing, I could just Dark Petition, get Armageddon, and call it a day. Could maybe wait an extra turn, go Chromatic Lantern into stock up, see if we can find more artifact mana or some indestructible lanes. I guess there's a chance our opponent's got a ritual effect in hand and they can still Raph and Mikey me next turn. But then I can maybe pivot and Dark Petition for a sweeper. Alright, so found Signet, and then do we want Vampiric or maybe an unexpected Windfall? Don't hate the Windfall. As some card draw and treasure. Vampiric Tutor, of course, can get whatever we want. And I can still cast it. Yeah, maybe that's still better. We'll also enable Spell Mastery for us. Alright, hopefully no Seething Song here. Dragonstorm is fine, more lands for Armageddon to destroy. So what do I want a Vampiric Tutor for is now the question. I have 4 artifacts, cards that can keep making mana post Armageddon, Signet in hand. So I don't think I need to get more artifact mana. Kind of down to get Arcane Bombardment. Could of course just get Armageddon now, and then I can Dark Petition for whatever I want, so doesn't really matter. So Dark Petition into Armageddon. And what do we get? Something like Imskir I can also cast on the cheap with my artifacts. Yeah, maybe that's fine just to get the game over with. Or like Krang could be fine too. So then I can still Signet into Armageddon. I lose 3 lands, you lose 7. Seems fair. Opponent passes, play a land first, then play Krang. Alright, so we've got mana aplenty. Can Pirate's Pillage, still play Breya. Imskir's good too. Krang up to 12 power. Play Imskir with our treasures. And our opponent scoops it up. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing off against a blue-black Rona deck. Our hand's got potential. Start with a tapped bridge, turn to Talisman. And then I want to make sure I fetch a land that's capable of casting the ultimatum, so do not want to get basic swamp, basically. Can't wait on the Mox Opal. Although I guess Mox Opal would be online now with the bridge as well, so I could have tutored already. But I'm not really in a hurry. So, yeah, can go for Vessel. And then next turn I could technically cast an Inspired Ultimatum already. Not sure if the opponent's packing a bunch of counter spells, or if it's more of a Reanimator deck. Looks like it. And yeah, they could already reanimate Jingataxius. It's gonna be the Parched for now. Untapping Rona. Rona activates again. And discards a Razaketh. So this turns into a land. So getting an Armageddon at some point would be fun. Although of course Enlightened Tutor's not gonna get Armageddon directly. Could get a Wish Claw, which can then get an Armageddon. Although I don't have a Breya in play to sacrifice it. So yeah, interesting spots. Could also go for Chromatic Orrery, which I would be able to cast. So yeah, let's maybe get that instead. That'll give me more options going forward. That resolves, so now I could still go for Breya. And if they reanimate one of their creatures, we should be able to answer it. They are looking at the graveyard, and Zombify gets back Jingataxius. So they get to draw a bunch of cards. My hand size would be reduced down to 0. So need to find an answer to the Augur. Could of course just sack 2 Thopters with Breya. But Inspired Ultimatum also seems like a fine way to go about it. So let's do that. Could also keep the Orrery available, but it doesn't seem realistic to still activate it here. Okay, Cruel Ultimatum is going to be better if there's a creature in the graveyard already. Can cycle the Triome as well. So I think for now, play Flooded Strands, and then just pass with Breya available. So we can also maybe answer Jingataxis if they try and reanimate it a second time. Rona is going to loot. See Jotzi in the graveyard. So if we can keep the board clear and at some point find an Armageddon, we should be able to take over. Opponent's going to victimize back Razaketh and Jingataxius. This is the Progress Tyrant, so it's a different one, which would counter my first artifact, instant, or sorcery. Can still take it out with double activations from Breya. And then Razaketh would also be a problem. I guess we do just have a Supreme Verdict, which is uncounterable. So that might be the play. Now they can still potentially cast another spell and copy it with Jingataxius. So they might have more reanimation spells coming up. A Treasure Cruise, yeah. So draw 6. Pretty good. That resolves. So I think the goal now is just to Supreme Verdict. So I can cycle the Triome. And then we'll just sacrifice some of our artifacts to gain life. First attack with Breya. Opponent's got to discard 2 hand size here. Now they will be able to use Razaketh to tutor up more reanimation spells, basically. So that's still a concern. And then I could let Breya go to the graveyard to get her back with Cruel Ultimatum. Although we don't really use the part where we make them sacrifice a creature. So I'll start here. Opponent's going to use Razaketh. So they'll find more reanimation spells, presumably. They are down to 8. So yeah, if we had an Armageddon here, it could have been game over, assuming no free counter spells. Although possible they have a Force of Will in hand now. So still probably sending back to the command zone. And then I could go for Coalition Relic and still replay Breya. Yeah, it does look like they picked up a Force of Will here at the very least. So that's going to make things tricky. Breya does have her ability available. So if they try and reanimate the 4 toughness core augur, we can take it out. And yeah, Cruel Ultimatum makes the opponent lose 5 life, so that combined with a Breya activation could also be game over. Make sure to charge up the relic. If I'm not going to use it, Vohar is fine. And the One Ring to protect him. So in response, I could deal 3 to them. This says target opponent sacrifices a creature, so I cannot target them with a One Ring. Yeah, I guess this is still fine. And then we can just use Breya to get the job done here. Once they untap next turn. Arcane Bombardment's a nice one too. Could also activate the Orrery to draw, but that doesn't seem super important. Is their opponent going to Force of Will? Would put them to 3. Commandeer to steal it. Alright, that was not on my radar, but fair enough. So anything else we want to do? I think we're just good to pass. So then now do I activate Breya twice? I think so. Is there any life gain that I'm maybe not seeing that could interfere? Let's try it. Then I don't have to sacrifice Breya in case I need to activate it a 3rd time. Opponent's going to activate the One Ring, that's fine. Vohar can gain a life, but that's still not enough. And there we go, awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Quintorius, History Chaser, so a Spirit control deck. Planeswalkers are a little harder for us to interact with, although Runa's Ultimatum could eventually be an answer. This hand is maybe lacking some early acceleration, but I'll give it a try. Got the Bridge as an artifact land to enable Affinity. Hoping to find any of our 2-mana artifacts here. Can play another Bridge. And then Arid Mesa can get blue mana. Opponent does have the Signet, so they can play turn 3 Quintorius. And we get to Thoughtcast. I guess the only drawback with playing the island is that it doesn't cast the Runa's Ultimatum. So maybe it was still better off getting a dual land. Quintorius discards Bolts. Arcane Bombardment is certainly worth the ramping into. So how about I big score? Again, maybe shouldn't play the Mountain, although these both make other colors for Runa's Ultimatum. So big score, discarding. Could also try and get lucky by discarding one of these and hoping to get them for free with bombardments, but I'll just play it safe, discard Sacred Foundry. And then, do I play the Talisman? I don't think I do, because then next turn I get to play Bombardment into Thoughtseize to trigger it right away. Opponent's gonna make some Spirit tokens. Now, Quintorius typically also runs a bunch of Graveyard Hate to enable their own synergies, which could also, of course, affect our Bombardment. So I'm hoping they don't find any here. Quin's Inside is fine. And a Scrabbling Claws. Alright, that is Graveyard Hate. So I want to get another, let's see, maybe white source. Maybe white-black, so it overlaps with Cruel Ultimatum. And then our opponent can use the Scrabbling Claws to target whatever I would otherwise get to play for free. Although I guess this doesn't target, this is random. So they can't really stop the bombardment. Unless they just get rid of my best card before it resolves. Which they could of course do. But they're more likely to make some spirits. Hit the big score. And then maybe I discard the Cruel Ultimatum in the hopes of hitting it for free. Since I probably don't have time to cast it. Gonna have to Runa's Ultimatum first anyway. Alright, so do not care about any of their removal. I do care about Arc of Hunger, perhaps. Although if they play it, it would also get destroyed by the Ultimatum. So maybe I still take the Arc. I guess Herald could also hit their own creature to ramp. So that has a bit of upside. But yeah, I'll just take the best card. Does give them another spirit, so I have to be careful that I don't just die to double strike here. Alright, opponent's gonna erode their own creature to ramp. So then that's less of a concern now. But they can Scrabbling Claws themselves to make another spirit. Okay, so as the dust settles here, this Runa's Ultimatum should keep us in the game.
It's the find of a lifetime.
That's fine, more permanents that get destroyed. And a Ghost Vacuum can maybe affect our bombardment on the way out. Alright. The Verge should be enabled, so could play that or the Vault. I think either way we should have the right colors. And I'm not going to have the mana to play a Relic first. Bombardment triggers. And our opponent scoops it up. Yeah, Runa's Ultimatum destroys everything except for their lands. And then we can maybe look into getting an Armageddon to destroy their lands as well. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Moseo, Vane's New Dean. We've got 2 artifact lands to start out and an affinity card, 2 ramp artifacts. So yeah, this seems decent. Besiege eventually wait to get Armageddon and cast it, assuming we can generate triple black. And solve the equation, can also search it up. Galvanic Blast already has Metalcraft enabled, so we can deal 4 damage. And Mire Triton. So our opponent's going to be gaining some life, reanimating creatures. I'll hang on to Galvanic Blast. Another artifact land. So I can go Weathermaker into Bridge. Of course, the Armageddon's going to be better if our opponent has a couple more lanes in play. And then we'll likely need to find a sweeper to keep the creatures contained. Moseo resolves. Could Galvanic Blast it. Yeah, that's probably fine. And then another artifact lane, so all artifact lanes so far. Yeah, let's just start with a Voyage Home. And then already want to start thinking about keeping some lanes in hand, especially the ones that aren't indestructible. If I solve the equation, our opponent will know what I searched up. So maybe I do want to just kind of wait a little bit longer. Can go for Breya. I'm sure they'll have answers. So I currently do not have a third black source for Besiege. Shieldred makes an appearance, could get lost it. I think for now I'll still just take my draw. Find a stock up that doesn't trigger Shieldred. So yeah, I'll just stock up and then we're potentially just gonna deal with Shieldred this turn. Finds a couple goodies, could just get the artifact mana and deploy that. Yeah, I guess that's fine. And this will give me the extra black as well. I'll let them keep Shieldred for a turn. And then next turn I can maybe Besiege for Armageddon and Wrath of God in the same turn. Opponent answers Breya. That's fine, was planning to wipe the board anyway. So then keeping one artifact token alive enables Bargain. Take my draw. I gotta get an attack in for 1 first. And then I want to float some mana. Cast Besiege. And get Armageddon. And cast it. I've got 2 indestructible lanes. Opponent's gonna entomb a response, sure. And then Wrath. And our opponent's out of permanence. And that'll do it. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Vivi, so a powerful blue-red spells deck. Well, we've got a ramp, a sweeper, so still missing a tutor effect for Armageddon, if that's our plan. But we can also just ramp into other things. So turn 2 we can play the Signets. And then next turn we can get a Talisman down. Or I could go for Breya if I feel so inclined. Opponent's gonna gamble. So we don't get to find out what they searched for. They will be discarding at random. And I don't think they searched up a curiosity, so... Alright, next up. Yeah, I mean, going for Breya is reasonable, even though we have this Day of Judgment in hand. So maybe I just go Talisman and then fetch a tapped land. Can't wait on the Mox Opal. Harmonic Prodigy is next. Possible they can give Vivi haste. Opponent is leaving up a blue, so it's possible they have a wash away for my commander. And then we want to get a blue source. Arcane Bombardment would be a nice one to get down. So let's try it. Could also play the Opal in case they have a Daze. So I've got an extra mana. Bombardment resolves. Okay, so now we just want to draw a bunch more instants and sorceries. Opponent plays Vivi. And we get to Day of Judgment. Opponent has a Flusterstorm. Okay. Can just pay for it. And a Subtlety. That's not gonna stop a Day of Judgment. Had they gone for Subtlety first, they would have increased their storm count, but that still wouldn't have been enough. Alright. Oops, indeed. Opponent can replay Vivi, but Breya can also take it out. So, sure. Play our commander. Sacrifice 2 artifacts. And I'll just sack the Thopters here. Can keep a land in hand in case I draw one of my treasure makers, which require me to discard. And Breya attacks. Do I feel inclined to take out the artist? Would let me replay Breya as well, since she can sacrifice herself. Yeah, that's probably okay. And then it's possible they'll have the wash away here that they were keeping up earlier. They do not. Frantic Search goes digging. And a Chromatic Orrery was a great draw. If we can resolve it, that is. And yeah, maybe it's worth it to shock myself just for an extra mana. You never know if they have a mana leak here. Okay, and then 5 mana to draw 4 cards here, basically. So we can do that next turn. And our opponent scoops it up. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Iroh Grand Lotus, so a Teamer spells deck with lots of lessons. Our hand is functional. Signet for a bit of ramp, Grim Tutor to maybe get an Armageddon, although I'll need more artifact mana before I wanna go for that. So this turn we'll get a tri-land. Something white and blue. Alright, drew the Armageddon. That's useful. So now we can maybe Grim Tutor for more artifact mana. Opponent getting back the fetch land with a Procession. And they Voyage home the draw. So it could be an okay turn for Grim Tutor, although I don't exactly know what I want to get. Can also go for Breya, even though I might be planning to wipe the board at some point. It would enable the Voyage home, so I think that's fine. So have a decent amount of black. I guess we do need triple black for Cruel Ultimatum. So I do want an extra white source and maybe an extra blue. Although I cannot get an untapped Hallowed Fountain, so get a Godless Shrine. And then next turn I can maybe Voyage home and try and hit some more mana artifacts. Technically, if we're ahead on board, we could just cast the Armageddon and ride our creatures to victory. But now without Breya, that's going to be a little bit harder. Prismari Command would have been very effective, even if they just destroyed a Signet or maybe an artifact land, if I had one in play. So back to the command zone, even though Cruel Ultimatum could eventually be a way to get her back. So hit for 2. And then I do think I play the Ancient Den to discount the Voyage by 1 more. And sure. Let's see what we can draw. Can Enlightened Tutor, although Firemind Vessels, one of the cards I would be interested in. So gotta discard to hand size. Yeah, maybe Rafine's Tower can go. Could also get a Crucible Worlds. Because I might have to Armageddon before the opponent slams down Iroh. So yeah, this would be a pretty good window for Armageddon. So then, what would I want to get? I think Crucible makes sense as a way for us to rebuild. There's a fetch land in circulation. So cast Armageddon. Make sure I float all my mana. Alright, opponent's back to the Stone Ages. And we can fetch. Do not have blue-white I can get, but Xander's Lounge is fine. So still need to draw a land before I can Crucible. Perfect. Hoping it doesn't get countered here. And then now we can start replaying our lands. And yeah, opponent has seen enough. Awesome. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Witherbloom, so black-green, kind of a token deck with affinity for creatures, trying to ramp into big spells. So Supreme Verdict should be excellent. Start with a Triome. Next turn I can Talisman into Galvanic Blast. And we're close to having Metalcraft enabled as well. So next turn with a Bridge we'll have 3 artifacts. Definitely a game where I'm gonna want a Supreme Verdict before going for Breya. And especially against the Skewed Swarm, the Verdict should be quite useful. So not gonna bother using Galvanic Blast. Arcane Bombardment is a nice one to get to. So I'll take it slow. Playing a tap land is not too suspicious, meaning we wouldn't have been able to play Breya. so they don't have to suspect a board wipe. And now an Emeritus. I could also Galvanic Blast, but yeah, we're just gonna Supreme Verdict here. We've got the right colors. And then I can still get a tapped land. I guess there's also Yavimaya, so we don't have to fetch if we don't want to. But I think I will. So I do want to find an Armageddon if I can. But for now we're building up our mana in other ways. So a little bit short of Chromatic Orrery. Could just play the Arcane Bombardment. Or I can play a Chromatic Lantern. And then follow it up with Breya. This is mostly distraction, hoping to force some interaction. Otherwise Breya could also maybe take something out. Opponent's looking at the graveyard. And a Black Sun's Twilight for 5 lets them get back the Emeritus. Luckily for us, they did not have the spare mana to tutor. So now I get to play the Orrery and then still Galvanic Blast, or I can Arcane Bombardment, but getting back Supreme Verdict is not all that exciting. So play Orrery, and then just Galvanic Blast with Metalcraft. Hit you for 2. And then next turn we're in prime position to maybe get the bombardment going. Still hoping to find some extra card draw, although we can always activate the Orrery. Valgavol's Onslaught, definitely a good one to sweep up. So they might have some more X spells in hand, and now Solve the Equation was excellent. I guess I can still solve the equation, and if I don't Supreme Verdict, I get to Toxic Deluge afterwards anyway. So let's solve, and then we can get Armageddon. And Arcane Bombardment actually hit the Supreme Verdict, so we get to wipe the board, and our opponent scoops it up. So yeah, we set out to build an Armageddon deck and destroy a lot of lands, and I think we accomplished that goal. The deck, of course, capable of some other very powerful plays, with cards like Arcane Bombardment, getting back our various ultimatums. So it's definitely not a deck you're gonna play to make new friends, but if you just want to do some degenerate stuff in 4 colors, this is not a bad way to do it. So yeah, that's gonna do it for today's gameplay. Wanna thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.